And of course, like so many people around the world, our eyes are transfixed by the war between Israel and a terrorist group called Hamas, and how that seems to be knocking down other dominoes. The United States has now sent 2 different aircraft carrier groups to the region. Russia is now deploying MiG-31s with their Kinzhal hypersonic missiles. Iran is saber-rattling. So is Turkey. We have a man on the ground. Our Australian bureau chief, Avi Yemini, who lives in Melbourne, has traveled to Israel along with our brave cameraman Benji. We have furnished for them bulletproof vests, but of course that's no defense against a rocket. We're very worried about him, but he's been safe. He knows how to handle himself. He joins us now from Israel. Avi Yemini, great to see you. What time is it over there? I guess it's about 8 p.m. Israel time, is that right?
That's right, 8 p.m. here, and behind us we're on the Israel-Gaza border, about 600 meters from the border, and I'm not sure, I can't see behind me, but it has been pretty active in the last hour or so, because I don't think it's known publicly yet, but at 8:45, Bibi Netanyahu is set to speak. I think they've taken out one of the senior leaders of Hamas.
I follow different Israeli government and military accounts, and they have been announcing different Hamas commanders. I understand a spokesman has been killed, and I'm sure that that is how you degrade Hamas. It's interesting. I remember when we spoke to you last week, you said that the land invasion seemed imminent, and in fact, it looked like Israeli soldiers were massing. There had been a big call-up of reservists. I see news now, or at least reports, I don't know if they're verified, that the United States has managed to persuade Israel not to invade straight away because the United States wanted to bring into the theater different anti-missile defense systems. I don't know if that's an accurate report. What can you tell us? Have you heard anything about A, why the ground invasion is delayed, and B, if it does have anything to do with America getting military assets into the arena?
So yeah, Ezra, so when I spoke to you on, I think it was Friday night, and I was telling you that it's imminent, and you saw it was a really active border. There was incoming and outgoing fire. All our sources on the ground, mostly people who were actually preparing on the front line, ready to go in. It was just the debate was about what time rather than whether it was going to happen. And then the news broke that Hamas released the 2 American hostages. And since then, it's been really difficult to get a sense of when this is happening. Again, when you talk to anybody across Israel, whether they're military or civilian or political, everybody says the ground invasion is 100% going ahead. I cannot see that it won't go ahead at some point. They've promised the citizens of Israel that they're going to annihilate Hamas. And that's, I think, what every Israeli expects. So even just from a political point of view, unless they have something, that I haven't thought of that is even better than a ground invasion for restoring the sense of security for Israelis. This ground invasion is happening, and all the people's with their opinions on Twitter, as to why it's happening and what's the delays, and I think they probably a lot of it's just speculation. It's very hard to know what's going on behind closed doors at the moment in the background. Mm-hmm. I do suspect that it does include a lot of negotiations because there are so many dual citizens involved. Like a couple of nights ago, they did plan to release 50 dual citizens until in the last moments. They said that they'll only hand them over if Israel gives the Hamas terrorists fuel, which of course Israel refused, and so instead they were 2 elderly hostages were released instead.
It's incredible. I've been watching your Twitter feed, and of course many others, and the amount of rockets still being fired out of Gaza is enormous, and they're still reaching areas in and around the major city of Israel, Tel Aviv, over 1 million people in the greater Tel Aviv area. It's incredible to me that 18 days after the terrorist attacks, and there's so much shelling and missile strikes against Hamas, they're still able to muster that much firepower against Israel. I'm a little bit surprised by that. That suggests that they are better built up, better hidden, better equipped than perhaps I'm an amateur here, but it is interesting to me that 17 days, 18 days into this, and they can still fire hundreds, maybe thousands of rockets out of Gaza.
Absolutely. And imagine they put that effort into taking care of their own citizens instead of trying to kill their neighbors, Ezra. But you're absolutely right. And I guess it just proves to the Israeli population even more so as to why they need to disarm Hamas. And I think that's also, most Israelis feel like it's probably in the best interest of the Palestinian people living in Gaza, the civilians, not necessarily the civilians that got involved in the lynching and the raping when Hamas paved the way for them on October 7th, but the genuine civilian that is not engaging in Hamas's behavior and probably doesn't want a part of that and just wants to live their life like any other human being, wants to work and provide for their family. So most Israelis think that if you remove Hamas, it's going to, one, protect Israel, but also, two, it gives peace and opportunity that will allow the Palestinian people themselves to thrive. Because remember, all that foreign aid that's been going to the Gaza Strips, billions a year, has obviously not gone to the infrastructure for the Palestinian people. It's gone to the infrastructure of the terrorist group for weapons, missiles, and obviously their intricate, huge tunnel network under the city. And that's probably the biggest fear going in for the ground forces here in Israel when they do finally enter the Gaza Strip. But we've had a pretty full day today. Actually, we've finally gotten some. It's really hard to get access here at the moment because it's interesting because we're traveling with another Australian who does a lot of wartime correspondence, and he says to me that when you go to war zones that are organised, access is always a lot harder. And he covered a lot of Ukraine, and he was saying in Ukraine you can just walk up to anywhere. You can literally walk to the front line, and you just say, "Hey, I know Robbie. I'm good." Here it's not like that, and it dawned on me today is I've got such a large family who are all serving here, and I made some calls to some family members that actually serve in some elite units, and I said, "Hey, we want to talk to the real soldiers, the real fighters that are going in, not the spokesman, because we're being offered all these spokespersons like all the other media, but that just doesn't interest me, and I don't think it interests the viewers because we know their talking points. We want to hear from the people that are actually going to be marching across that border at some point, and we certainly got that today. In fact, we also got Special Forces police who helped recapture Sderot, this city that 50 terrorists went house to house butchering the locals. So it's been a pretty full-on day, and behind us, of course, I think you can hear it. It is certainly heating up.
Wow. So we'll be able to see all those interviews at thetruthaboutthewar.com in the hours ahead. I understand that you have to send those videos back to us here, and you're busy in the field, busy editing. There's so much going on. You're a one-man army. Well, Benji's with you too, and I salute you both for doing that. You mentioned earlier that a ground attack is something that every Israeli wants, not just for a sense of justice, but for a sense of so it will not happen a second time. And the fact that Israel hasn't been able to knock out from the air Hamas's rocket launching capability sort of demonstrates that maybe that brutal Stalingrad-style house-to-house battle is necessary, although I just am terrified at the thought of that. I mean, these underground tunnels, it's not like a trench network. These tunnels can be 200 feet deep. Like, these are serious, it's almost like a mine. And I don't even know if there are missiles that can penetrate that deep from the surface. I'm not an expert enough to know. And the idea of sending soldiers into underground, booby-trapped tunnels in the dark is so terrifying to me. We know in Vietnam there was these traps and tunnels, but those were nothing like 18 years of industrial tunneling. I'm terrified of what might come. But you said maybe there's something more appealing to assuage the enraged and sorrowful Israeli public, and the only thing I can think of is a sort of decapitation strike at the Hamas leadership, or even Iran, Hamas's financier. And I'm just in my own amateur way thinking, well, what could Joe Biden possibly be offering Israel to make Israel stop the invasion? Joe Biden is not going to send American troops onto the ground of Gaza. I'm pretty sure about that. Would he have American special forces go and grab the leadership of Hamas? Would he even try something with Iran? I don't know, but it would have to be of that kind of qualitative character, I think, to be any sort of acceptability to the Israeli public that's not wanting to go ahead, weigh in.
I think for the Israeli population, it actually has to come from, and not only for the Israelis, for the Arab world as well. I think that this needs to come from Israel. It can surely the support of the United States, at least symbolically showing that they actually are going to stand by their allies, is important, because I think most of the world doesn't believe in America's might anymore, especially since they talked so tough when it came to Ukraine and they did absolutely nothing. But I think that whatever it is, it's kind of got to be this Entebbe moment for Israel. One, for the population to feel like their military and the brand of the IDF is reclaimed, and the same for the Arab world. The brand of the IDF, the one that they feared for so many years, Israel's entire existence relies on that. So it is important that it comes from Israel, and Israel reestablishes that kind of military might. And I feel like they're cooking something, and we're just going to have to wait and see, because maybe there are a lot of people getting impatient.
Yeah.
There are also a lot of, this has never happened. It's never happened that Israel has to basically go in and fight while there's 210 plus hostages in there. So it's a really active scenario and a dynamic one as such, because the last one that I actually was, I remember, that's outside of 2000, before 2014, last time there was hostages, Gilad Shalit. It was one hostage, and they had him for 7 years in there. So it's interesting to see how it will unfold, but I dare say that whatever it is, it's going to have to come from Israel.
Yeah, I take your point. I mean, that's one of the great shocks of what happened 18 days ago, is where was Israel's famed intelligence agencies? Where was the high-tech fence that had served it so well? Where was the military?
This is the question that I've literally asked everyone, from political figures to activists to tonight the special forces a police officer who reacted here, to regular military, and everybody says a lot has to be answered. Everybody says that, and they all then say the same thing. But right now, it doesn't matter, because it did happen, and right now we need to win the fight to be able to then go back and look at what went wrong. So every Israeli's asking that same question that the entire world is asking, and that I came really wanting answered. But what I realized is they're probably right. It's not the most important. It's not the most important point. It's not the most important issue right now, because it doesn't matter even if you find out who was at fault. If you lose this war, what does it matter? Because none of them will be here later to answer for what went wrong.
Yeah, very interesting. Well, it's quite a fleet that the United States is assembling, and I keep thinking to myself, why? Is it just to warn other powers not to get involved, warn Hezbollah not to attack? I mean, if you have 2 aircraft carriers, including the newest and the largest ever built, the Gerald Ford, that is a lot of firepower. And It'll be interesting to see.
I
I
think
think.
I
Go ahead.
think I think there is I think there's a there's a build of a number of militaries at the moment building up in this region, including the Australian Army is redeploying to the Middle East at the moment. That was announced today as well. So I think that people realise that this conflict, I hope, doesn't grow into something bigger, but people realise, or at least countries realise what's at stake here.
Mm-hmm.
And I think from the Israeli perspective, at least the Israeli citizen and the Israeli soldiers and everybody here, from their perspective is if we fall, the rest of you are going to be next. And I don't think they're wrong.
Yeah. Well, Avi, it's great to see you, and thanks for your coverage. For folks who want to see all of Avi's videos, you can go to thetruthaboutthewar.com. Watch all of his videos. We've also put other videos related to this subject on that same page. And if you feel moved to chip in to help crowdfund Avi's cause, please do. It's not just Avi, it's our brave cameraman Benji. We flew them in from Melbourne, Australia. That's where they're based. There's food and accommodation, of course, the bulletproof vests and helmets that we had to acquire quickly. So there are other costs involved. If you can chip in, please do. You can do so right at that same page. I think it's very important to have the other side of the story, especially when you see what the CBC and BBC and the Australian Broadcasting Corporation have published. Last word to you, Avi.
I've got to say, I've got to give Dave Menzies a shout out because today, I don't actually remember because we've bumped into so many people today, but someone brought up his video in Canada, which I think it must have been Menzies. It sounded like a Menzies situation where he was at a pro-Palestinian rally and really exposing what these pro-Palestinian they're not pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas, the pro-terrorist the supporters are in Canada, and it's reaching these shores here. I cannot remember who it was today, but shout out to Dave because he's obviously having an effect.
Well, it's great to hear, and it is incredible to see how far some of his videos have gone. The one where he interviews the young woman in Mississauga who's wearing the AK-47 earrings. In fact, the IDF put that in an official video, the Israel Defense Forces. And there's an older video by David when he was at an Al-Quds Day Iran-funded protest in Toronto and just encountered an incredible and shocking pro-Iran protesters. So David's been on the streets of Canada. In some ways, that's a terrifying battlefield. So, Avi, stay safe. Thanks for joining us at this hour.
All
right.
Thank you, Ezra.
Right on. Oh, hi, everybody. Did you know that every weekday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Mountain Time, we have a live stream where we talk about the news of the day, go over viral videos, hot tweets, hot takes, and we read your comments. In fact, if you make what's called a super chat or a rumble rant of $5 or more, we'll read your comment on the air and respond to it. I've been doing a lot of these live streams lately, but when I'm not here, my friends Sheila Gunn Reid and David Menzies do it too, and they are way more fun than me. But either way, it is a good show, and it's a way to stay up to date with the news of the day in short, snappy updates. It's not scripted, it's a live stream, and it's fun. You can always watch us on Rumble on YouTube, or just go to rebelnews.com. That's every weekday at 1 p.m. Eastern. See you there.